Want to go ahead and start the, all right. Hi, I'm Brooke Ostrom. I'm a business and media mentor with 1678. And this is my 5th year as a business and media mentor. When I'm not mentoring the team, I'm in marketing for an engineering firm and have been pretty much in public relations and marketing throughout my career. So we're going to talk a little bit today about public relations and team image and just kind of go over some of the components of that and some of the things that are important to keep in mind. So the big question is always, why do you need to manage your team image and your message? It's important for developing your team identity. Obviously, wherever you go, when you're out there, having a logo on your shirt, having a way that your team is readily identifiable through all your media channels, through your branding is really important. Helps you create connections with your community, getting your message out there, letting people know who you are, what you do, which helps you eventually with sponsorships. Helps you recruit new members. You guys have, you have an identity, people know about you, know what you're going to do, and it helps you engage with your sponsors. A lot of your communications are a good way for your sponsors to know all about your team and why they should be sponsoring you. So some of the things to keep in mind is your image does reflect your team. So whatever you're doing and however you put that image out there, that's a reflection of your team. That's everything from how your students present themselves at competition, what they're wearing, to what does your Twitter page look like? What does your website look like? All these things reflect on your team. All of them are things that people are looking at and get an image and an idea of what your team is all about. It's important to be consistent. If you have an image, if you have a logo, here, come on in. If you have a logo that you use and, use it consistently. People identify with logos. So, it's a good way for people to know who you are when they see, a combination of colors or they see, a certain image or whatever. However you apply that across all your different social media platforms, it's important to be consistent. It's important to be timely. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but particularly on things like your website, if you're sending out press releases, your Facebook posts, timeliness and being up to date is really important. And who's your audience? This is one of the main things you always have to think about when whatever you're doing is who is your audience? Because when your audience is different, your tone is going to be different. The way you talk about the game is going to be different. The way you talk about your team is going to be different. If you're talking to sponsors, it's probably different than if you're talking to other students on your team, or you're talking to your alumni, or you're talking to people in your community. Everybody has a different understanding about what you do, and everybody's kind of at a different place. So you always have to kind of keep that in mind, is what's the tone and what's the approach that you're using with those different audiences. So just go through some of all the components of this. The main one is branding. So these are some pretty recognizable logos, some brands, I'd say, for these teams. Anybody sees those, you know who they are. It's important to have some consistency. Like I said, some teams change their logos all the time. That becomes a little confusing. People don't really know, is that still the same team or not? Some teams change their logos occasionally, which is great. But try and have some consistency, and so when people see, again, the colors, whether it's like for us, it's the lime green. For 254, it's obviously blue and white. When people see those colors and those images, they know who it is. Something that's easy to recognize, that's consistently applied, so that it's not, it doesn't look different every time you see it. And making sure you have standards. So this is really important. So I think every good team that creates, who's doing a good job with their media, has created a set of branding standards. How many people have branding standards for your teams? Have you guys looked into doing branding standards? Anybody? You guys? Okay. So great. Branding standards are really important. If you look at any big company out there, they have very specific ways in which their logos can be used. I worked on a project one time that sort of peripherally involved Pepsi-Cola. And Pepsi has a book literally like that thick about how you can use the Pepsi logo, what colors it is, what shape it is, what the relationship between all the parts of it are, how you can't use it. You can't turn it into a spinning globe. You can't change the colors and everything like that. And those are the kind of things you need to think about for your own logo. For us, we define what the color is, what the alternate colors can be, what the fonts that are used with it are, how you can use it. And it's all defined so that it's basically to protect your brand, because your brand is really important. And, I think you'll see all teams like this, have created that kind of brand that people recognize, but it's because they're very careful about it. And you can have variations, but you want to make sure that everybody understands what those are and that you're consistent in how they're applied. So there's a lot of different media channels out there now, and I'm sure most of you guys are using most of these, if not all of them, or if not more. So we're going to just kind of go through and talk about some of the different platforms that teams use and kind of how they're used. So one of the basics of all these is writing the written word. It's something you're going to use in press releases, on your website, obviously even in your social media posts. It's all about the written word. One of the most important things I've learned in years of writing things for various applications is always get somebody to proofread your work. Even if you're doing a social media post, have somebody else take a look at it. I think one of the things you realize after a while is that, everybody, if you're doing writing, you know what you think you wrote and you know what it's supposed to say, but you've probably worked on it, particularly if it's like a longer piece, you've probably worked on it for so long that you're not really reading it anymore. You know what it's supposed to say. So you're not really reading the words on the page anymore. Here, come on in. So it's really important to get somebody else to take a look at your work. Like I said, even if it's a Twitter post, even if it's a Facebook post, just have somebody say, hey, is this okay before I post it? Is everything spelled correctly? Did I get the right team names in here? Whatever it is, just be sure you have somebody else take a look at it. Be precise. Make sure that you're clear in what you're saying. Spelling, grammar, are really basics, right? But they're the things that oftentimes get overlooked. And again, when you talk about creating a brand for your team, when you talk about how you're communicating with people, using correct spelling, using correct grammar, putting yourself out there is in an appropriate way is really important, particularly when this goes out to sponsors, goes out to the community, goes out to your parents, showing that you guys are able to do that properly and appropriately is really important. So one thing I left off of here, not on writing, but somehow kind of got left off of here. The other thing that forms the basis for a lot of the stuff that we do on social media, obviously, is photography. So photography and video. Usually you'll have some people on your team that probably have an interest in it, and having good photography is really important. All the things you're going to post on. If you're going to post on Facebook, you're going to send something in the newspaper. You're going to put something on Instagram. Having good photos is important. So making sure that people understand how to use their cameras. Hopefully you have somebody who has like a real camera they can use. If all you have is a phone camera, that's fine. But if you have people with good cameras, making sure they get some training in how to use them. Video is real important. Every year we do, a season wrap-up video. We're doing some sponsor videos right now that we can use to, promote our sponsors on our social media platforms. We do, our chairman's video. There's a lot of applications for video. You can use it on social media. You can use it in producing things about your team. So again, getting some training in video and getting somebody who understands how to use a video camera or how to use your camera to take video, and then getting the tools to edit that are really important. We use the Creative Cloud suite. There's other things out there, but if you have access to that, your school or whatever, getting some training in that and how to edit videos and do that creatively is, can make your stuff really effective. So press releases. How many of you do press releases? How many of you put something out to your local media? You guys? Anybody else? Okay, good. Press releases are a great way to let your community know what you're doing. Whether you have events coming up, whether you went to a competition, if you're going to a competition, if you're doing a fundraiser, all those, are good things to get out to the newspaper. Or if you just have a great story, about something that your team is doing or somebody on your team is doing. It's something out there that can get out there in the press and reflect well on your team. So it's really important, as part of press releases, is put together something that provides the background on what you're doing, and make sure it's factual. It's really, press releases are pretty much who, where, what, why, when, right? It's pretty, and you're giving people the facts, and you start right off at the top. There's a pretty there's pretty much a format for a press release. If you look online anywhere, look up press releases or press release format, you can see, pretty much how they're supposed to be put together. And there's a very prescribed way of doing it. But, your first paragraph, you're going to want to tell people what's going on, and then you provide more and more information after that. But as you go down, more and more of that information is less important, because usually editors will cut from the bottom. So what you want to do is start off in that first paragraph with everything you want to know. So even though it's factual, you still want to make it interesting. You still want to make somebody, should read it. It's just, you want to kind of find that fine line between, telling people the facts, but not really going overboard with so many superlatives that it sounds like something you should have on social media. So it's, finding something that's professional but still interesting. And that takes some work. So this is just kind of an example. We have a really good relationship with our local newspaper here in Davis. And this is one of the most important things, I think, is find somebody in your local newspaper who is going to cover you. Usually there's an editor or reporter or somebody in your local newspaper who covers either high schools, or covers education, or covers science and technology, and that's what they're interested in. And what you need to do is go to the paper, and either look in the paper and see who's writing about those stories, or contact the paper and find out who the best person to talk to is. Who's your science and technology editor? Who's your school editor? And then that's who you should be directing this stuff to, because they're the ones who are going to be able to get it in the newspaper for you. So, this is just kind of an example of what we do. We found, so Next Generation just happens to be the section in the Davis Enterprise that does a lot of stuff on high schools. So we identified who the editor for that was. We started contacting her and then, showing her that, hey, we have some interesting things. We're sending them to her. So she's, we'll run them in the newspaper. So, the first paragraph, again, it's just what are the facts? Citrus Circus Robotics team led the winning Alliance Central Valley Regional Competition held in Madera last weekend. Okay, that's pretty much everything they need to know. And then the rest of this is just kind of all the supporting information. What was the game? Who did we play with? And some details about it. But, in that first paragraph, you want to get across everything that they need to know. Along with it, we send them a photograph. So again, this goes back to how important photographs are. If you're going to send if you're going to send along a press release, send a picture. Make sure it's a good quality picture. It's high resolution picture. This is kind of an anomaly. We sent them a picture of our robot. Most newspapers really like pictures of people. So if you have pictures of, your students with the robot, your students at the competition, that's all good. And whenever you send something that has people in it, you need to be able to identify who those people are. So you send a photo caption with it and you say left to right, here's who the people in the photo are, because they'll print that with it. But, if you have a good action photo, that's great. You can send them a couple of photos. But again, always identify what's in the photo and what it's about. When we did this press release, we were able to use this to talk about another event we had coming up. So we include in here that we had the Sacramento Regional Competition was being held at UC Davis. So we were able to take this one about, hey, we just competed somewhere, and hey, we've got an event coming up. So it helped promote that upcoming event. And then at the end of your press release, you always want to have, there's usually a couple boilerplate paragraphs. Boilerplate is the kind of thing you include in everything. So the boilerplate paragraphs, we tell them who we are. So you probably just want to have a paragraph that says who you are, who your team is, and then we do a list of our major sponsors. And so you probably always want to try and get your sponsors in there, because if you have sponsors, they like to be recognized. If it gets into the paper, that's great for them. That's a win for you. So always include something about your sponsors and something about your team in your press releases. So getting it published, kind of went over a lot of this, but it's finding a contact. So who's it going to go to? Making sure that it's timely. So if you just compete in a competition, try and get it out to them that week, right? Don't wait 3 months and then send it to them, because they don't really care. They care about stuff that just happened. So you need to do it right away. Again, with the press release, put it in a format that they can use. That's usually something that, is double spaced. Usually send it as an attachment, like a Word document or something. It's usually double spaced, and just in a format that is easy for them to edit. Again, send along a photo. And then really important, along with that press release, put a contact information in there. So who are they going to contact if they have any questions? So there should be somebody on there, should have a phone number and an email address. Say, hey, if you need any more information, you want to talk to somebody more about this, if you have any questions, who do they get to? And that's really important for the editors to have somebody that they can get to right away. So newsletters. So newsletters are a different kind of thing. These are aimed at the people who already know you, right? They're going out to your alumni, they're going out to your parents, they're going out to your sponsors. So these are people who probably know a little bit more about what FIRST is, what your team is, what the game you're playing is. So you can be a little bit more informative about what's going on. You can be a little more personalized. You can, you don't have to put in as many details, like explain as many things to them. But if you're using a newsletter as a way of communicating with, again, the people who know you, be sure you're consistent in how often you're sending out. If it's going to be a monthly newsletter, send it out monthly. If it's going to be a quarterly newsletter, send it out quarterly. If you're going to do a monthly newsletter and you say it's a monthly newsletter, if you're sending it out every 2 months or whatever, it's not a good way to do it. Do it on a frequency that you can commit to, and so that people know when to expect it. So if it goes out the first of the month, every 2 months, that's what you want to know, so that people can know when it's coming up and they can look for it. And the great thing about newsletters, you've got complete control. Right? You put in there what you want to put in there. You tell people what you want to tell them. It's a great way to communicate, again, with your alumni, with your sponsors, with your parents, and keep them up to date with what the team's doing. So formatting of these, you want something that looks nice. I mean, you can either have it as you send people a link to something on your website. You can send it as an attached PDF, whatever works best for you for what you're doing. Having a good design. This is one from Funky Monkeys. They've kind of got it set up, looks a little bit more like a newspaper style. You can do anything that works for you, but just as long as it's readable, it's clean, and it's something that people can pull up and get the information from right away. Photos, again, really important to have some photos in it, and it's a great way to tell people what you're doing. So media coverage. So this is like getting getting the TV cameras out or getting the radio station to cover you. It takes a lot more work. Again, it's about creating relationships with the media, finding out who, does the assignments for that type of thing. Usually there's an assignment editor at the radio station or particularly the TV stations. You need to find out who the assignment editor is, talk to them, send them the information ahead of time. It takes a lot more work. There's no question about it. And, you're competing with a lot of different things. But again, you've got a great story. If you're doing a competition or you're doing a demonstration for kids in your community or whatever it is, inviting the media out there to cover you is a great way to get some good publicity for your team. So if you have connections with a local TV station and you can invite them, sometimes they'll come, sometimes they'll say they come and they won't come, but it's worth doing. So if you have some special event of some sort, it's worth making that extra effort to try and get the media to attend. So social media, this is probably, I'm sure, one of the ways you guys mostly communicate with people who know about you. Again, the main thing is that, you want to look at what's the, how do you use each one of these platforms? What's the frequency you're going to use on all of them? And the good thing with social media too is it provides you some, immediate interaction. So, you get feedback from, the people who are following you. So Facebook, pretty wide audience. Probably mainly your parents and your sponsors. So think about it that way. I mean, it's kind of evolved into a platform that's probably more for, older people like myself. I mean, that's where I'm looking for stuff. So, think about it that way. This is someplace you maybe, it's still a lot of fun. You can have a lot of fun with the posts. Be sure that you're using photos. That's always great on Facebook. If you can use video on there too, that's good to use. Again, just make sure you're using stuff that is, clear. If you're using video, make sure it's edited, and is capturing what you want on it. Facebook frequency, pretty often, you can post on there, probably not multiple times a day, but, probably you want to post regularly, whether it's once a week or a couple times a month or, whatever works for your team and depending on the season. So these are just kind of some example posts from us. Again, using multiple photos, tagging some of our partners in them. We do a lot of Facebook posts, obviously during competition. We try and keep up, even in the off season, kind of keep up a regular profile on Facebook of events or things that we're participating in. Twitter, pretty wide audience, pretty diverse. Probably a lot more your peers and things than some of the other channels. It's pretty short. You can do it more often. It's something now, like for us, we use, like during competitions, we'll only post on Facebook once a day, but we'll probably do a Twitter post like after every match. So it's a way of just kind of keeping people updated on things. Or then we'll also, cross post with both Twitter and Facebook on, other events where there's not something happening all the time. But again, you can do a lot of the same things as Facebook, and gets to, a little bit different audience. Again, just some examples of some of the posts that we've done before. Instagram, again, probably pretty much your peers. Obviously more focused on photos. This is where, again, having good photography, having good photography to pick from that's been curated is really important. Some people use Instagram for everything. We use it just probably more occasionally. It's not our primary. We'll probably do more on Twitter than we do on Instagram. But again, it's a good way to get, particularly if you've got stuff that you want to get visuals out about, whether that's your robot or an event or people on your team or something like that. It's a good platform for that. And again, just some examples of some of the things we've done on Instagram. I mean, we did our seniors graduating, which was nice, or just, what we're doing at competition sometime. YouTube, this gets out to everybody, obviously. We mainly post on there, like I said, our season recap videos, chairman's video. We do videos on some of our programs. We do an off-season video. We'll have all our workshops up on there. So if you guys want to see any of our workshops after this is all over with, they'll be posted on there. So yeah, whenever you have video, you can put on a YouTube channel. Again, it's a good way to promote your team. And if you have things you could put together over the course of a year and post up there, it's a really good resource. Just some of the links to some of the things that we've done. So your website. This is, everybody's going to see your website, right? Everybody that's looking for you is going to go to your website. You should pretty much have complete control over your website. I think the biggest thing about a website, and I know there was we had another workshop on this today, but the most frustrating thing to me is seeing websites that aren't kept up to date. You go on there and the last thing that they updated is like 2016 or something like that. It's really important to keep your website up to date. So, when you go on there, you should have, what are you doing in the current season? Who are your current students or mentors? What are your current activities? That should all be on your website. You can use your website to do a lot of things. You can post resources about your team. You can post media about your team. You can post stories about your team. But that is the primary way most people are going to know about you and what you're doing. But like I said, the main, and you've already developed a wealth of material that you can put in there. And this is the thing I have to kind of keep reminding even our own team. It's like, you've already written press releases. You've already got photos from all these things. You've already got a lot of information you've already developed. You don't need to develop necessarily new stuff to go on your website. You can kind of aggregate a lot of these other things you've already done. So you already have a lot of content you can put on there. But again, keep it up to date, keep it fresh, change your photos, change your front page on it. So when people come to your website, they should feel like they can get something out of it. Whether there's new resources on there, whether there's new stories on there, whatever it is, try and find things that you can post on there and do it so that people find something new when they go there. That's just our page. We use Weebly for ours. That's worked out pretty well for us. I don't know, what do you guys use? Anybody else use Weebly or other platforms? Wix, yeah, a lot of people use Wix. It's really good. So, if you have something you use or if you develop your own, we've used Weebly because it's easier for us. It's a little bit more plug and play. So when we have a lot of turnover, it's easy to have people who can work on it. But you can kind of see some of the things we have. We have information about the robotics courses, about the team and our robots, resources that we provide, our Davis Youth Robotics program, our outreach programs, media, which is all our videos, photos, newsletters, and then information about our sponsors on there, which is obviously really important. This is just Bird Brains. They have a really nice website also. They're a good one to look at if you're getting ideas. So the main thing is all this is connected, right? All this goes to being about who you are as a team and how you present yourself. So what you do on social media, what you do on your website, what you do in your branding, this kind of all comes together to tell a story about your team. And so it's really important, to help manage that story and help make sure that that story is really clear and that story is a really accurate representation of who you are as a team. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to do what I can to answer them. Oh, just real quickly, some resources. I'll put in a big plug for Compass Alliance. Has anybody looked at Compass Alliance? Nobody in here has looked at Compass Alliance. All right. If Compass Alliance is a new, relatively new website. It's called the Compass Alliance. We're now in partnership with FRC on this. It was founded by, I think there were 8 teams altogether, including ourselves, who came together, teams from all around the world, to create a resource for FRC teams. And there are pathways on there for just about everything. I mean, fundraising, public relations, robot design, whatever it is, you can go on there and find information on it. Like I said, this year we started a partnership with FRC where we're actually producing resources for FRC that are going to be available through the Compass Alliance. So I really recommend everybody take a look at it. There's a lot of great information on there. It's just called the Compass Alliance. And it's a great place to go if you just have any questions about, gee, how do I do this, or what other teams are doing it. They have what's called a tag team program that will help hook you up with another team if you want to, that can help assist you on some things. If you're looking at branding standards, Holy Cows has a great branding standards program, great documentation on it, really good idea of how to really represent what your brand looks like and how to manage it. Funky Monkeys, again, nice newsletter. We have a lot of examples of our press releases on our website. You can take a look at it if you want. Exploding Bacon, they've won a number of media awards over the years. Really good team when it comes to public relations and image. They're a lot of fun. Really just kind of go to their website, look around. There's a lot of great information on their website as well. They have a lot of fun with it. 254's website, really classic. They do a very nice job with it. Obviously, they have a really great way that they recognize their sponsors on there. So, all these are ones I'd recommend taking a look at. But, in general, kind of go around and look at what other teams are doing. It's a great way to get some ideas. Look at our website. We've got a lot of stuff on there as well. But, yeah, I will make one more plug. So take a look at the Compass Alliance, and that covers a lot of different things. So anyway, I'll be happy to answer some questions. If you guys want to use this QR code, there's a short survey you can take. Would love for you guys to fill it out just to give us a little bit of feedback on our presentations, what we can do better, what we can do more of, what we should do differently. So really, if you do get a chance, please use that and give us some feedback. So anyway, does anybody have any questions about anything? Or are you all just too tired and want to go to dinner? Yes?
When you're doing media for an event, let's say like a season recap, or let's say you're capturing footage of the actual competition, do you guys make a plan of what you want to get pictures of, or is it just kind of like, hey, get what you can, and then we'll try to make something of it?
That is a really good question. So the question is, do you when you're doing your video and you're doing an event or something, do you put together a plan? And you absolutely do need to have a plan. You need to have some sort of a shooting list that you can go over. We try and do that for every event. We try and have a photography shooting list, and we try and have a video shooting list. So we go into it and say, hey, what do we need to get photos of? What do we want to have at the end of the day? That way, you make sure that when it's all over with, you're not looking around and going, gee, we didn't get any photos of, our robot or whatever. And what we try to do also is at the beginning of the season, we're kind of thinking about, okay, we know we're going to do a season recap video. So we talk about that up front, as we will often kind of generally storyboard what we're going to do for the video for the year. So we look at it and we go, okay, we know we're going to these competitions. These are the kind of things we want to get. We want to make sure that we get people. We want to make sure we get interactions with other teams. We make sure we want to get, robot footage on the field. But yeah, we kind of have a list of the things we want. And I think that's really important because it's really tough after the fact to go back and like, okay, I've got all this video, but, I'm missing things, or I didn't really get what I wanted. So yeah, having a shooting list before any event or competition and having just kind of a general idea of what you want to get out of it is really important. It's a good question. Any other questions? No more questions. So I covered everything, I guess. Yeah.
What are good strategies for acquiring sponsors?
Good strategies for acquiring sponsors?
Like keeping them long term, wanting them, good strategies for having sponsors come back to next year and give us the same offer that they gave us before.
Or better. Yeah. So what we put together, and there was if you go online, there was a presentation we did earlier today on sponsorships and fundraising, or it was last night. But it'll be on our website, on the YouTube channel. But I mean, just kind of in general, is it the main thing with sponsors, I think, is keeping ongoing communication with them. So I mean, all this stuff feeds into that, right? Making sure you send them a regular newsletter. Making sure that, if you recognize them on your website, so that they, feel like they're kind of part of what you're doing. So what we've done is we put together what we called a sponsor retention program. And so we assign a student who's kind of responsible for keeping communication with whoever the contact is for that particular sponsor. And so we make sure that that person gets a newsletter. We send them invitations to events. We try and do a sponsor event in our shop every year and invite our sponsors to come in and see what we're doing. We also try and do sponsored demos where we go to them and we'll bring our robot and set up something so that we can show them and their staff or whatever, what the robot does and talk a little bit about the team and all that kind of thing. The more that your sponsors can make a personal connection with you, the more they know about what you're doing, the more likely they are to stay with you as a sponsor. We always talk about you want to create a partnership with your sponsors. You want them to feel like they're a part of your team, that they are a part of what is important to your team. And so the more that you communicate with them and you kind of get that message to them about, hey, here's what we're doing, you're a part of it, thanks for supporting us, come to our shop, can we come and talk to you, here's our newsletter. It just makes them feel more involved and it makes them feel like they're more part of it rather than just coming to them once a year and saying, hey, can you give us more money? The other thing that we did with NVIDIA this last 3 years, and we're trying to do with some other sponsors too, is to see if they're willing to do a multi-year sponsorship. What we did with NVIDIA was we said, hey, we're buying a trailer, and we'd like you to help support our buying a trailer to take our stuff to competition. And they said, sure, we'd love to do that. So we figured out a 3-year sponsorship with NVIDIA. And on that 3-year sponsorship, we put their logo on the back of our trailer. I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's out here in the parking lot. NVIDIA's got this huge logo on the back of our trailer. And the great thing is NVIDIA's colors are the same as our colors, so it looks fantastic. So that's something to do too, is come to a sponsor and say, hey, we'd like to do this as maybe you could see sponsoring us for the next 3 years at whatever level it is for those 3 years, and just kind of have an agreement with them that you'll be a 3-year sponsor. And then as part of that, give them something special, whatever that might be, whether it's, like for us, it was kind of making NVIDIA our travel sponsor in a way. But something that kind of gets them a little bit higher sponsorship recognition somehow for having that extended sponsorship. So something to look into. Some people might be open to it. It's particularly good if you can have something that you can attach it to maybe it's a scholarship, maybe it's like I said, maybe it's a trailer, maybe it's, something special on your robot. I don't know, but you find something that maybe is attractive to that sponsor that they would be willing to sponsor over a longer period of time. And the great thing about that is then the next year you don't really have to worry about going to that sponsor again and seeing if they're going to sponsor you because you've already agreed you're going to do that. But again, it's keeping that communication and using all of this stuff to help keep that communication with them. Give them a T-shirt. Give them a plaque at the end of the season recognizing them for their sponsorship. Like I said, send them the newsletter, recognize them on your website. Do a video about them and post it on Facebook. Those are all things you can do, and how you can use all these different channels to do that. Anything else? Yeah.
How big of a team does it take to cover all of those bases? Between social media, the newsletter, the website, all those things that you talked about? I can't imagine it's like one person that can.
No, it's so when I started with the business media team 5 years ago, we had sort of like 2.5 students doing it. And yeah, there's a limited amount of stuff you can do. We were able to kind of do the basics, and we had a website and we got things out. Now we actually have, I think, 15 students on business and media, which is a lot. I'm not saying they're all busy all the time, but I mean, we found like last year we had about 8 students, and we were able to do a lot with 8 students. But then and if you don't have 8 students, if you've got 4 students, you've got 3 students, it's really just kind of a matter of priority.
That was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. So if you don't have the students to handle all of those things, what would you prioritize of that?
Your website. Your website's like I said, that's the number 1 place anybody's going to find out anything about you. Number 2, I think, a social media platform, whether that's Facebook, or we use Facebook a lot, like I said, because it goes out. I mean, everybody uses Facebook, but it kind of skews toward parents and sponsors. So, which are really the people you want to get to most of the time. Your friends are going to find out about what you're doing anyway. So Facebook is a good way to reach your parents and sponsors. So I'd kind of, and you can do it so you're posting on Twitter at the same time. So, it's easy to do that. So yeah, I mean, Facebook is good. A newsletter is good, but you don't have to do it monthly. You can do it quarterly. Do a quarterly newsletter. Do a bi-monthly newsletter.
Do you email the newsletters?
We email them. Yeah, we use MailChimp. We're still kind of figuring how to best do it, but mainly it's like a link, and then they can go to it and open it up. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of, I'd say, your website's really your big thing. And then, I think doing like press releases and support for your events, to sort of keep yourself out there in the community. That's really important. I mean, if you have a good community newspaper, or, if that's how people get their news, or if there's an online resource for the community, that's a good way to do it too. But those are kind of the main things, I'd say. And then, like I said, having somebody who is going to do your photography for you, or your video work for you, having a student that's interested in that's important, because that supports a lot of what you're doing, really. So, but yeah, it's prioritizing is really what it boils down to. Yeah.
For relatively new teams, where would you start looking for sponsors? Like, if you just started and you don't really have a lot of stuff to show.
Yeah. I mean, a good place to start is just, who do the parents on your team work for? Do they have companies? A lot of companies have matching programs. A lot of those companies could also potentially be sponsors. So, I mean, talk to the students on your team and find out who do your parents work for, and, see if that's a fit. Look in your community or your general area and see, are there companies or larger companies that have a relationship with STEM? Are they, engineering companies, or, software companies, tech companies, the kind of companies that the students on these teams are going to go work for someday. I mean, that's the kind of ones that you can really connect with. Or even just if there's larger local companies around that, look at who's sponsoring a lot of the stuff at your school, or who's sponsoring a lot of other things around town. Some of those people are good to approach. We've found some, I mean, interestingly, we've had a really good sponsor relationship with a real estate firm. She's a real estate broker. She really likes supporting the team because she likes the fact that she can, go to people when she's selling houses and say, hey, we have this great robotics team in town. And, and so, I mean, there's kind of surprising ones like that you might not think about, but, could be available to you. Where's your team located?
Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach. So Yeah, I mean, I mean, look around at, some of the tech companies, look around at like who the your parents are working for. And I'd say even there, yeah, talk to some of the, bigger real estate firms or something like that. I mean, they may be interested in being a sponsor. Anything else? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Just to add on to your question, you can go to the pit and look at all the sponsors that other teams have. You just jot things down.
Yeah. It's not a bad approach either. Yeah.
Also, to add on to you look at a place like Pebble Beach, like demographic-wise, that area, I would just go to a country club and like network with people and explain that there are a ton of rich people out there that will back.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Take advantage of what your community has to offer. I mean, I think that's basically what it boils down to. Yeah, and those, I mean, really, it's just looking at, there's companies that want to be associated with you, and that's why, again, it's important to get the word out about, who you are and what you do, because when they see that, they get pretty excited about it. I mean, and the biggest, I would say the biggest responses we've had is when you're able to get sponsors or parents, community members in to see what you do. If you have a shop, have an open shop night, invite people in. That makes the biggest difference we've seen, is that once they see what you're doing, actually doing, they get really excited about it. So, I mean, try and do that, or get your robot out in the community, show people what you're doing, and that gets people really excited. All right, well, thank you all very much for coming. You can all go to dinner now. And you can always, if you guys have any more questions, you can always email us at business@citruscircuits.org.
Able to scan that, at least off of the screen,
I don't know
I
how
know
that
the
works.
reflection isn't right, so
Here, I'll go.